My visit to the San Augustin Museum has led me to the realization that for me, answers the question asked of us during this venture, but also answers something more personal for me that we will get to later. But first, let's start with the beginning. On my way to the museum, I already found myself reflecting on what answers I might find once I get to my destination. I had come up with multiple possible answers, but the one that I was set on was that by visiting the San Augustin Museum, I would come to appreciate our roots and our identity as Filipinos. But as my move-it entered Intramuros and I was nearing the church, I saw something that caught my eye. A 7-Eleven. Not just a regular 7-Eleven, but one that was made to fit the aesthetics that is prominent within Intramuros. I remembered not thinking much of it and just thought it was pretty neat. And it also played into my initial answer of this visit just resulting in an appreciation of our Philippine history. After that, my move-it arrived at the church, and I was finally standing face to face with the grand presence of the San Augustine Church. I made my way to the museum entrance, paid my ticket, and entered the museum. And as I walked through the halls filled with paintings and statues, I remembered the crucial component that I missed when thinking about my initial answer: the concept of time. When I came up with my initial answer, my view on time was simple: a straight line, where things happen that we can forget or remember, and what we do remember is what we call history. And since time is a straight line, we can't go back, so the present is the only perspective we have when viewing the past. But as I continued to walk through the museum, I found my view on time beginning to change. Seeing the stone walls that have stood for 400 years, paintings made by artists from a time long past, and cloth worn by people so long ago made me question whether or not the thing that separates the past from the present is really just the chronological order of history. The more I walk through the museum with the view of time that it's not just a straight line, but as a tangible realm that we can visit certain points of and witness for ourselves the lives of our predecessors, really made me not just appreciate our culture and history, but empathize with the lived experience of people from the past as if I was there myself. After my visit with the San Augustine Museum, I began to walk around Intramuros before going home. And during my walk, I ended up in front of the 7-Eleven again. This time, instead of just finding it neat, I began to appreciate how its design is intended to preserve a specific point in history. In fact, you see this everywhere in Intramuros. From the guards dressed in traditional civil uniforms and the horses that gallop across the cobbled street. All of this to ensure that you can suspend your disbelief and feel like you truly stepped back 400 years into the past. And for me, they succeeded. But that's not the whole story. For me, this was the second time I had visited the San Augustine Museum. The first time was with friends for our art appreciation finals, but this time I went alone, and I went at 10 a.m. in the morning. The feeling of walking through the grand halls of the museum alone with no one else in sight filled me with something I can only describe as a creeping anxiety, and it's something I've felt before. In my younger years, I once contemplated how many people were alive in the past that lived a complex life like my own, which freaked me out and led to me developing an irrational fear of the concept of time. While doing research for this, I have found a word that calls this revelation sonder, which is the feeling one has realizing that every other individual one sees has a life as full and as real as one's own, in which they are the central character and others, including oneself, have a secondary or insignificant role. But for me, this realization and the combination of the grand scale of time with people living complex lives in the past really made me anxious about thinking about any aspects of time, whether past, present, or future. And for the longest time, I was questioning myself as to why I felt this way. It was only when visiting San Augustine Church with the concept of time in mind did I get my answer. I realized I was standing within a piece of architecture that is made to make me feel small in the presence of something big. And there it was. My fears started out with sonder, which then evolved to the feeling of insignificance in the face of time. While my fear of time has subsided, feeling it again after many years, even just a little, makes me appreciate my growth as a person who before feared anything that had to do with the past, to then loving the experience of walking around a place that is 400 years old and is filled to the brim with history.